This guy created the greatest weapon of all time for the hero, but in return, he gets despair and betrayal. The hero not only kills his only family member, but also cuts off his crush's leg, so he vows to take revenge. In the kingdom's darkest hour, a legendary weapon was finally revealed. A hero's sword, born from fire and magic, awaited the one warrior worthy of wielding it and changing the course of the war. However, a woman immediately gets angry when someone comments that it looks like nothing more than an ordinary sword. She begins explaining that the blade is forged from the mythical metal known as orichalcum. Not only is it remarkably light in the hands of its rightful wielder, but each strike is 10 times more powerful and can even cancel healing effects. She adds that this is still far from everything the sword can do before revealing its creator. The creator turns out to be her childhood friend, Bill Bark, the same boy she used to beat up when they were kids. Bill appears, clearly embarrassed, and says that he only wants to use his skills to bring peace to the world. The hero accepts the sword with admiration, knowing that not even the royal blacksmiths work with such a rare metal. Bill, however, warns that the weapon's true value depends on whether its user can unlock its hidden potential. The hero steps closer, placing a hand on Bill's shoulder, and promises to make him the greatest blacksmith on the entire continent. Hearing those words, the main character's eyes fill with stars and hope. To Bill, the hero shines like a divine, inspiring figure. He thanks him awkwardly, seeing himself as nothing more than a simple countryside blacksmith. In his own mind, he is just a side character, yet he is content knowing his talents can still be useful. Soon after, Bill calls over his friend Sepia to talk. He shows her a ring he crafted while forging the hero's sword, nervously stuttering. He explains that the ring is also made of orichalcum and says it would suit her well. He tries to confess his feelings but becomes completely tongue-tied. In the end, all he manages to do is ask her to accept the ring as a gift. Before he can hand it to her, Sepia gently takes his hand. She asks Bill to give her the ring only after the Demon King has been defeated. Her response leaves him confused, though he forces a smile and agrees. Bill clenches his fist, understanding the true meaning behind her words. He has always known that Sepia loves the hero, yet he still chose to take his chance, because she would soon travel far away with him, to a place Bill could never reach. With a bittersweet smile, he accepts his fate and wishes only for her happiness beside the hero. 4 years pass, and news spreads that the hero's party has finally defeated the great evil. Years later, Bill works in the forge as his uncle questions what saving the world ever accomplished. The apprentice complains that they can no longer afford the taxes, and that the forge will soon be confiscated. Irritated, the uncle throws a bottle at the rookie and shouts that the Empire is to blame for favoring massive, state-controlled workshops. Bill asks his uncle to stop grumbling, saying the government must have its reasons. He adds that simply knowing he helped the hero fills him with pride. The apprentice scoffs, mentioning that the hero is now honored as the Lord Protector of the Empire. Guilt washes over the uncle as he says Bill would have had a better life if he had never taken over the family business. Bill refuses that idea, insisting it was his own decision and that he will find a way to earn money. As curfew approaches under the hero's orders, night descends, and the forge falls silent within the lonely forest. The following day, Bill walks through the city alone, carrying a small case. He believes starting a repair service was a good plan until he hears loud shouting from the street. A group of merchants is protesting for their rights. Confused, Bill asks a passerby what is happening. The man explains that the Empire will now trade exclusively with large guilds, causing unrest. Soldiers have surrounded the crowd to keep order, and Bill thanks him for the explanation. Still, Bill thinks the protesters are foolish, believing demonstrations will change nothing. He worries they are risking their lives without considering their families. Seeing the situation as pointless, he turns away, deciding it has nothing to do with him. Then something draws his attention, and he looks back into the chaos. His face changes instantly when he recognizes someone he knows. His Uncle Phil stands among the protesters, shouting for merchants' rights. Stunned, Bill wonders why his uncle would be involved in something so dangerous. Phil also notices Bill, and looks equally surprised to see him there. Suddenly, a knight announces that action will be taken by order of the Lord Protector. Martial law is declared immediately, and the soldiers are commanded to raise their spears. Weapons point forward as the unit prepares to move. Moments later, the order to attack is given, and the soldiers charge. Without hesitation, the knights assault the unarmed crowd. Panic spreads as people flee, and Bill freezes in terror. A spray of blood flashes past his face, and when he realizes what happened, he screams in horror, his face splattered. Seeing this, Uncle Phil desperately shouts for Bill to run. At last, Bill snaps out of it and grabs his uncle's arm. He pulls him along, shouting that he knows a hidden way out. They dash into a narrow alley, trying to escape both the chaos and the pursuing guards. The soldiers refuse to let anyone get away, yelling orders as they give chase. One knight is commanded to strike with full force if needed. Without mercy, A soldier cuts down a fleeing civilian. Bill keeps running, lungs burning, but he refuses to drop the case he carries. He pushes deeper into the dark alley while Imperial guards close in behind him. As he runs, memories of his father teaching him during his first days at the forge surface in his mind. Suddenly, the world around him changes. The alley transforms into glowing blue lines, as though everything has become a living blueprint. Every structure reveals its inner design to him. His eyes shine with blue light, and Bill realizes he alone can see the world this way. This strange power, possessed by no one else, may be his only chance to survive. Focusing, he searches for an escape path. A nearby wall glows red, revealing a structural weakness. Without hesitation, Bill pulls a hammer from his case and strikes the spot with perfect precision. A passage opens through the wall, and everyone rushes through, while one fugitive glances back in disbelief. The broken wood smolders, as if scorched from within. The soldiers continue shouting, ordering the execution of all traitors. Bill looks back anxiously, knowing the danger is not over. The knights threaten the rebels to stop or face punishment, but Bill ignores them and begins counting silently in his head. An enraged soldier screams that they will all suffer. Meanwhile, the wall behind them begins to crumble like sand. The count reaches 2 as cracks spread wider. When 1 appears in his mind, the entire structure destabilizes. At 0, the wall collapses completely. The wooden structure crashes down onto the pursuing soldiers, leaving them stunned and confused. Taking advantage of the chaos and dust, Bill and the others escape. At last, they reach the hidden forge deep in the forest. Inside, Bill trembles, repeatedly muttering about what happened in the city. He collapses to the floor in despair while Uncle Phil apologizes. Phil urges him to calm down and asks him to explain how he managed to save them. Still shaken, Bill asks what happened back there at the protest. His uncle admits he does not know, but agrees that the Empire's response was far too extreme. He says that Bill must now understand how the government grinds the weak into the ground. With his palms pressed against the floor, Bill pleads with his uncle to never take part in protests again. Phil, however, asks what will become of the country if everyone stops resisting. Still kneeling, Bill replies that the fate of the nation is the Lord Protector's responsibility, not his uncle's. He admits that he is terrified, because his parents never returned from the war, and he has already lost Sepia. Phil listens quietly as Bill explains that he works endlessly, so they will not lose the forge. Through tears, Bill asks what he would do if he lost his uncle as well, saying he could not endure that pain. Touched by his words, Phil gently places a hand on his head and apologizes for everything. He then pulls Bill into an embrace, promising that from now on, he will not let him worry anymore. Phil later tells the others that he is leaving the movement, and they accept his decision, inspired by his choice. The others also step away, unwilling to gamble their lives further. Once the tension fades, peace finally settles beneath a clear sky. By the following morning, all the fugitives are sleeping calmly inside the forge. After a restless night, our protagonist slowly wakes. He opens his eyes, still groggy from the recent chaos. Nearby, his uncle stirs as well and once again apologizes for the fear he caused. Relieved, Bill assures him that he will no longer need to worry about the forge. At last, Bill lies back down, believing that everything has finally returned to normal. That calm is shattered when the forge doors are violently kicked open. In an instant, soldiers of the Empire rush inside, and their commander orders everyone to be arrested. Bill is seized and accused of treason against the state, leaving him utterly stunned. Everyone is bound and dragged outside, while Bill struggles to make sense of what is happening. It feels wrong to him, since an attack should have come during the night. Moreover, the forge is isolated, making it unclear how the soldiers even found them. Suddenly, one of the fugitives shouts that this was not part of the deal. It is Tom, who steps forward to defend his master, insisting that Bill never took part in the protests. As they are led away, Bill finally understands the truth. He fixes his gaze on his apprentice and realizes that he has been betrayed by the person he trusted most. Tom is shaking and cannot bring himself to meet his master's eyes, overwhelmed by shame. With his hands bound, Bill quietly asks why he was betrayed. Then he screams with all his strength, demanding to know why Tom sold them all out. The apprentice explains that the soldiers had promised not to arrest Bill under any circumstances. They had said Uncle Phil was of no value to them. Through tears, Tom explains that the forge was going to be confiscated anyway, and that Phil only drank and joined protests. On top of that, the government offered rewards to informants. Tom believed that if the uncle were removed, the forge could be rebuilt from nothing. In the end, he turns away, apologizing for his betrayal. Sometime later, the sound of trumpets announces the arrival of someone important, and Bill is brought before the Empire's throne room. Cleaned up and trembling, he stands as the Lord addresses him as comrade. The Lord Protector reveals himself to be the hero, Oliver Prime, and tells Bill to relax. Bill awkwardly replies that it is difficult to feel at ease in such a place. Oliver wastes no time and asks if Bill would be willing to join the people's movement. Panicking, Bill drops to the floor, declaring himself a devoted admirer of the hero. Oliver laughs and remarks that Bill is one of the few who still calls him that. He explains that Bill's innocence is already known, as a witness confirmed everything. Bill feels an immense sense of relief and wonders who helped clear his name. Oliver then reveals that he personally paid off the forge's debts, leaving Bill speechless. He dismisses it as a small favor for the man who once saved humanity. Among the spectators, one man questions why Bill is being treated so favorably. His companion responds by speaking of the three greatest master blacksmiths of the world. One is the Cyclops of the demon realm, another is Vulcanus of the kingdom of Aveline, and the last is the golden hand of the Valteron Empire, known as Midas. He reveals that the greatest of them all is Bill Bark, Midas himself, the one who forged the hero's sword. The first man doubts this, pointing out that there are more than 20 masters in that kingdom alone. His friend replies that Bill is humble, but everyone knows he stands above the rest. Gathering his courage, Bill decides to ask the hero something. Oliver smiles and tells him to speak freely. Bill explains that he has lost contact with Sepia and wants to know how she is. At the sound of her name, Oliver's grip tightens on the throne's armrest. Still, he says she is currently on a mission and will return to the forge in time. Overjoyed, Bill thanks him for the news. Bill then hesitantly brings up one final request, asking if his uncle can return home with him. Oliver's expression turns serious as he asks what Bill would do if it were already too late. Bill is shocked, unable to understand the meaning. Suddenly, Oliver bursts into laughter, claiming it was only a poor joke. Bill remains confused as the entire court joins in the laughter. The Lord Protector soon regains his composure and admits the joke was a mistake. He explains that while Bill's innocence is proven, Phil's has not yet been confirmed. Oliver apologizes and promises to see what can be done. Grateful, Bill continues to see the hero as a beacon of hope. From that day on, Bill throws himself into his work at the forge, waiting for their return. He feels a twinge of sadness when Tom vanishes, leaving behind only a letter and some money. Still, Bill carries on, keeping himself busy for the sake of his uncle and Sepia. The days pass quickly as he prepares equipment for Sepia and wine for Phil. Eventually, with a frantic expression, he wonders how much time has slipped away. One day, a knock breaks the silence at the forge. The visitors identify themselves as members of the Imperial House, surprising Bill. Without hesitation, he rushes to the door, filled with excitement. He believes the long-awaited moment has finally arrived, that he will be reunited with Sepia and Uncle Phil. He imagines asking about her gear and sharing fine wine with his uncle. Smiling brightly, Bill opens the door to greet them. Instead, he is met with two coffins resting in a barren field. Nearby stands a distorted version of Sepia, drooling over one of them, while the other coffin belongs to Uncle Phil. In that moment, the worst day of Bill's life is sealed forever. His world collapses completely. He notices Sepia and asks what happened to her leg. Her spectral body appears to be suffering intense pain and agony, until she suddenly falls off the coffin, completely unaware of her surroundings. Bill questions whether he is dreaming when he sees Sepia leaning against one of the coffins. He slowly walks toward the wooden structure, unable to believe his eyes. With tears streaming down his face, he asks why his uncle is lying there like that. After all, he had even purchased an expensive drink so they could celebrate together. All of a sudden, our protagonist bursts into uncontrollable laughter, which quickly transforms into a scream filled with pain and despair that echoes throughout the room. He keeps screaming, demanding to know why this is happening to him. Driven by madness, Bill begins shaking the coffin, pleading for him to wake up. The pain is so overwhelming that it feels as though his own flesh is being ripped apart. At that instant, he remembers Oliver's lie about Sepia mission. That false promise redirects his growing rage. He also recalls the empty assurance that the hero would help his uncle return. With that, all of his fury finally finds a clear target. Dropping to his knees, he releases one final scream of pure anguish and hatred. His eyes glow with power, as his suffering finally has somewhere to go. The scene shifts to the past, when Oliver bids farewell to our protagonist. He gives Bill a golden emblem as proof that he had been his guest. Oliver explains that the emblem would allow him to visit the castle or even sell it at the market. He jokes that the object is made of pure gold and is worth a great deal of money. Bill accepts the emblem gratefully and promises that one day, he will repay the favor. Back in the present, Bill presents the emblem to enter the castle, and the guard recognizes him instantly, wearing a cold expression. Bill explains that he has come to carry out maintenance on the Lord Protector's sword. The guard instructs him to wait while his superiors are informed. As he waits, Bill clutches his case tightly, his tension clearly visible. He begins imagining how a direct confrontation with the hero might unfold. In his thoughts, Bill rushes toward Oliver in a desperate assault. However, he knows the odds of defeating the strongest man alive are nearly non-existent. In fact, his chance of success is precisely 0%. In his imagined battle, he is defeated effortlessly. After all, our protagonist is only a blacksmith, not a trained warrior. Moreover, the hero wields the strongest sword ever created, making victory impossible. That is why Bill carefully considers his options and arrives at a simple solution for his revenge. It is something only a blacksmith could accomplish, and something no one would ever suspect. His plan is to use his repair skills to his advantage. After all, a blacksmith repairing a weapon is completely normal. Because of this, Oliver lowers his guard entirely, never sensing any danger. As a result, the most powerful weapon in existence ends up in the hands of our protagonist. With the world's strongest man left defenseless, Bill believes his plan is flawless. He asks whether he should use the hammer or the hero's own sword, but Oliver responds that he never wanted to be a hero. Confused, our protagonist scoffs and asks if Oliver is about to complain about his life. Oliver then explains that he grew disillusioned because no single person can save everyone. Bill slams his hand on the table, arguing that Oliver brought peace to the world and has no right to speak that way. In the end, the hero agrees that he did save the world from destruction. However, he questions what might have happened if the Demon King's army had never invaded. If there had never been a need to save the world from such a great threat, Oliver explains that the answer had been simple all along. They only needed to become so powerful that no one would ever dare oppose them. If the nation had been powerful enough, the war would never have happened. That was the conclusion he reached after defeating the Demon King. Bill remains silent as the hero begins to reveal his true intentions. His answer was clear. He believed that he alone should rule the country forever. To accomplish this, he destroyed the corrupt nobility and searched for new and capable talent to strengthen the empire. Oliver raises his hands and declares that he will not stop until there is no one left who can stand against them. He then asks Bill if he understands why he was brought to this place. Our protagonist does not care to respond properly and instead charges at the hero with everything he has. He shouts that if Oliver is finished talking, then it is time for him to die. Although surprised by the sudden attack, the hero shows no concern. He calmly points a finger at Bill and says it is a real shame. In the next instant, Oliver fires a magic arrow that pierces Bill's shoulder. Intense pain floods his body as the force sends him flying backward. When he hits the ground, the hero's sword slips from his grasp and falls to the floor while he cries out in agony. Hearing the scream, the guards rush into the chamber and find Bill lying on the ground. They quickly ask whether the Lord Protector is unharmed, but he brushes it off and says it was nothing serious. Without hesitation, Bill is arrested for attempting to assault Oliver Prime. Our protagonist then asks how long Oliver had known about his plan for revenge. The hero replies that it was the wrong question to ask at that moment. After all, having defeated the Demon King by himself, it would have been obvious that he could sense hostile intent. Curious, Bill asks why Oliver did not deal with him sooner. Oliver responds that it was because Bill was highly capable and talented. He then reveals that he wanted Bill to become one of his closest allies. The hero extends his hand and tells him that the offer is still available. Surrounded by guards, Bill asks if Oliver is serious and says he will decide only after asking one final question. Oliver finds this amusing but agrees to answer honestly. With a stern expression, Bill asks what happened to Sepia. He wants to know why she ended up in such a terrible and unsalvageable condition. Oliver explains that she was an exceptional warrior who defeated 200,000 demons. However, during the final battle against the Demon King, she lost her leg. Even so, she did not fall into despair, and together they managed to defeat the great evil. After a long and brutal war, peace finally returned to the world. That peace did not last long. Humanity soon began fighting among itself. As the power of the kingdom weakened, even the heroes were sent back to the front lines. Sepia was the only one left behind, confined to a wheelchair. While her friends continued to fight, she was left feeling useless and alone. Overcome by loneliness, she drank until sorrow caused her to collapse onto the floor. Desperate to become useful again, she turned to something forbidden. Through the use of dark magic, she was able to return to the battlefield. Oliver states that Bill has already witnessed the side effects of that power. The hero then asks whether Bill has reached a decision about his proposal. Bill ignores the offer and says his question still has not been answered. He demands to know why Oliver did not remain by Sepia's side to support her. She was his comrade, yet he allowed her to fall into such a miserable state. Bill shouts that she lost her leg fighting alongside him to save the world. He adds that as Lord Protector, Oliver had the power and influence to help her. The image of Sepia running happily flashes through Bill's mind. He says that she needed Oliver more than anyone else. Oliver responds by accusing Bill of trying to shift the blame onto him. He yells that if Bill truly cared, he should have gone to help her himself. While Oliver was out saving the world, Bill had been safely working in the forge. Pointing at him, Oliver demands how he dares to lecture him. The hero calls Bill a coward for abandoning his responsibilities and then falls silent, waiting for a response. Oliver suddenly begins to laugh mockingly and repeats the word coward. Without warning, his expression twists into madness and hatred. In a swift motion, he severs Bill's arm. Bill stares in shock at the empty space where his arm once was. Oliver shouts that he bears no responsibility for anything that has no value to him. He adds that Bill's life was spared only out of recognition for his past contributions. Bill's severed arm hits the floor as blood spreads and pain overwhelms him. He screams with all his strength as Oliver turns away. The hero leaves the room, abandoning Bill to suffer alone. Sometime later, Bill Old Forge comes into view, now left completely abandoned. A knock echoes at the door as someone calls out, asking if anyone is inside. Without warning, the door opens and Bill stands there with an empty, lifeless stare. The visitor turns out to be Sarah, a former member of the hero party and an old friend of Bill. After listening to everything that happened, she comes to understand the fate of her friend. Sarah jokingly remarks that the nation has prospered under Oliver rule, but her comment irritates Bill. She then complains that her visit was pointless, since he can no longer work as a blacksmith. Even with his arm in such a miserable condition, Bill refuses to give up. He insists that he is still capable of working, yet he declines to forge a dagger or handle any repairs for her. At that point, Sarah lies down and says it is unfortunate, because she had planned to tell him the truth about Sepia. Hearing this, Bill changes his stance and agrees to take the job, but only this once. Pleased with his response, she asks how much he plans to charge for the dagger. Bill answers that the payment will be the cost of the materials and the full story of Sepia. Sarah accepts the terms, and the two of them sit down to talk. While Bill works, Sarah explains that the hero reshaped the entire story to benefit himself. She then asks whether Bill truly believes Sepia would have failed to evade the Demon King attack. After all, Sepia was the second fastest member of the party, surpassed only by Sarah herself. According to her, the Demon King was quick, but not overwhelmingly powerful. Nearby, Sepia was playing with the ring Bill had made for her long ago. In the end, Sarah reveals that Sepia did not fail to dodge the blow, she deliberately chose not to. She sacrificed herself to shield the hero from the Demon King attack. The reality of the battlefield was very different from what had been told. In truth, it was Oliver who approached Sepia and asked for her help during the war. He needed victory in order to become the Lord Protector, but the situation was turning against him. Sepia, however, refuses his request, believing she could not be of any use in her condition. She shows him her injured leg and says she cannot contribute anything. Oliver steps closer and tells her not to concern herself with such a minor issue. He then presents a grimoire they had recovered from demon territory. Sepia is horrified when she realizes it is a book of forbidden dark magic. She argues that such power should never be wielded by anyone. Oliver clenches his fists, clearly displeased with her response. Overcome with anger, he throws the book at her. The hero shouts that they are comrades and that she has no right to refuse his request. He then moves closer and begins speaking about their bond, saying that he had always seen her as more than just a fellow warrior. Sepia is left utterly speechless by Oliver's sudden confession. Realizing what he has said, he quickly brushes it off, pretending it was only a careless slip of the tongue. He apologizes and asks her to forget everything that happened that day. As he turns to leave, Sepia stays silent, deep in thought. Moments later, she calls out and asks him to wait. With resolve in her eyes, Sepia looks at Oliver and makes her choice. Seeing this, the hero lets out a cruel smile, knowing his plan had succeeded. Sarah had been hiding nearby, silently watching everything unfold, and she heard Sepia agree to the proposal. Close by, Sepia is suddenly startled by something and drops an item onto the floor. It is the orichalcum ring that Bill had crafted for her with great care. The ring rolls across the ground and finally comes to rest near Bill's foot. In that moment, Bill understands the truth. He walks toward her and asks if he can see her hand for a second. Confused but compliant, Sepia holds out her hand, and Bill gently places the ring on her finger. He tells her that this way she will not lose it again. However, the ring immediately slips off Sepia's finger and falls away. Bill finds this unsettling, as the ring no longer fits her at all. He clearly remembers forging it to match Sepia's hand perfectly, yet now it easily slides down her finger. Suddenly, he drops the ring and begins to feel extremely unwell. Bill collapses to the ground, questioning why this is happening to him. Tears spill from his eyes and soak into the dirt beneath him. He tightens his fist and cries out, overwhelmed by rage and pain. All of his suffering bursts out in a scream filled with despair. He slams his fist into the ground, releasing all the frustration he has been holding inside. As he lies there, he starts to wonder when his life began to fall apart. He asks himself if it started when he accepted an apprentice into his forge, or perhaps when he allowed Sepia to leave without trying to stop her. In the end, he questions whether the real mistake was handing the sword over to the hero. Bill believes that everything he did only proved how weak he truly was. He feels utterly helpless, stretched out on the ground with no strength left to rise. All of a sudden, sudden, he sees a vision of a woman smiling softly at him. It is Sepia, who comes closer and gently touches his face with warmth and care. Tears continue to flow from Bill's eyes as he wonders what is happening. He questions whether she has come to comfort him after all that has occurred. Guilt overwhelms him as he realizes he never acted when she needed him the most. Resolving to change his destiny, Bill grabs his hammer with his remaining hand and promises Sepia that he will correct every mistake he has made. With a single powerful strike, he begins forging a new weapon, pouring all of his strength into the work. Energy surges through his body as he works tirelessly in the forge without rest. He swears that he will set everything right, no matter what lies ahead. Sarah then says her farewell, mentioning that she will return in 2 weeks to collect the dagger. Before leaving, she admits that she also carries guilt for failing to stop Oliver. Bill remains silent as she prepares to go. She tells him that if he ever needs help, he only has to call for her, promising that she will aid him at least once. With that, she departs. Sometime later, a massive burst of light erupts from the forge. The protagonist emerges changed, now bearing a metal arm, and he swears that his revenge will be total and unwavering. The scene shifts to a group of students sprinting through a forest. Their leader asks Hans to brief everyone on the mission for the day. Hans explains that reports have come in about explosions occurring nearby village. The leader is satisfied with the response, and Hans continues outlining the situation. He emphasizes that their priority is investigation, not combat. The group agrees, then splits up to begin searching the area. Before long, they reach the site where the explosions occurred and start examining the surroundings for evidence. One student points out that there is no trace of gunpowder in the air. Another observes that the scattered sawdust is fresh, meaning the culprit cannot be far away. A girl then raises the possibility of teleportation magic. Hans responds that the location is too close to the village for escape magic to be used safely. The leader commends everyone for their sharp observations and says they are heading in the right direction. Suddenly, something draws their attention, and the group cautiously moves to investigate. They conceal themselves among the trees and quietly observe what is happening. What they see is our protagonist practicing sword techniques. He appears to struggle with controlling the blade using only one hand. Bill keeps training, though his movements are awkward and unrefined. Hans scoffs, complaining that the target is nothing more than an inexperienced swordsman. He looks disappointed, admitting that he had hoped to find a powerful mage instead. Hans remarks that Bill's fighting ability is no better than that of a street thug. The girl agrees, saying that all three of them are not even necessary to handle him. Another student nods in agreement and prepares to launch a surprise attack. Hans asks whether their mission has now shifted from reconnaissance to capture. The leader explains that without solid proof, he cannot officially label Bill a criminal. However, he then produces a wanted poster bearing the protagonist's face. Reading it aloud, he notes that Bill is a blacksmith, with several unusual remarks attached to his name. The leader is stunned to see that Bill is accused of attempting to attack the Lord Protector. He immediately orders Group A to prepare for a capture operation. He stresses that capture is preferred, but everyone understands the implication. One student acknowledges that if capturing him fails, eliminating the target is permitted. Hans begins to reconsider, realizing that anyone accused of attacking the Lord Protector must be extremely dangerous. The girl steadies herself and insists that they should go all out from the very beginning. With that decision made, the three students rush toward the protagonist with full force. Working together, they overwhelm Bill and knock him to the ground with ease. Bill is left stunned, unable to comprehend what just happened. Hans is unsettled by how easily Bill was defeated and starts doubting that he is truly the criminal they are looking for. The group briefly considers that Bill might simply be an informant connected to the case. Hans grows pensive, weighing the situation and deciding how to proceed. He walks forward and tosses Bill's sword onto the ground beside him. Then he tells Bill to pick it up and face death like a true swordsman. Wearing a smug grin, Hans claims this is an act of mercy from the next hero, himself. Bill responds with a glare, clearly irritated by the boy's arrogance. He retrieves his sword and tells Hans that he has completely misunderstood the situation, since they attacked him without warning. Bill decides that conversation is pointless. Hans instructs him to watch carefully, announcing that he is about to demonstrate proper sword technique. He begins by explaining how to judge the distance between oneself and an opponent before striking. With swift footwork, Hans prepares his next move, then lunges forward at incredible speed in a single smooth motion. Bill is shocked, unable to even see the blade as it flashes dangerously close to his neck. Hans continues his explanation, noting that a strike should flow without interruption. He immediately proves his point with another powerful maneuver. Stepping in even closer, he completes the sequence and finishes by slamming a heavy kick straight into the protagonist. At last, Bill feels the blow land and cries out in pain as Hans's strike connects. The sheer force sends Bill flying across the battlefield. As he lies there, he hears Hans mock him, calling his effort disgraceful. With a cold expression, Hans demands to know how Bill intends to repay all the time he has wasted. At the same time, the leader of the group senses that something about the situation is off. Their assignment was to investigate the explosions reported near the village, and the shattered trees and scattered rocks clearly proved that powerful blasts had taken place. Because of this, they assumed the culprit had to be a mage or someone using explosives. Instead, all they encountered was an inexperienced swordsman, with no trace of mana or the smell of gunpowder. Lying on the ground, the protagonist pleads with Hans to stop. Hans responds by asking what exactly he is supposed to stop and continues pressing his attack. It is then that the leader realizes that if no one else is involved, Bill's true weapon must be something entirely different. In desperation, Bill stretches out his hand and tells them to finish it. His weapon was not a blade at all, but something closer to a cannon. Without warning, a massive burst of red energy detonates and slams into one of the students. A vision appears of a hand bound by chains, snapping apart under the overwhelming power. Hans screams and grabs his ear, accusing Bill of being a coward for concealing his weapon. Bill fires back, questioning what kind of swordsman could so casually discard his own sword. He scoffs, wondering aloud if Hans even deserves to be called a swordsman anymore. Those words ignite Hans's fury. Enraged by the insult, he swears to tear out Bill's mouth along with the rest of him. Completely cornered, Bill squeezes his eyes shut, bracing himself for the final strike. Before the blow can land, steel clashes in midair. The group leader has stepped in at the last second, blocking Hans's attack. Hans shouts at his instructor, stunned by the sudden interference. The leader, however, praises Bill's tactic, noting how effective it was against them. It carried enough destructive force to defeat its target in a single attack. Yet at the most crucial moment, the young apprentice hesitated. By closing his eyes in fear, he lost the opportunity to finish Hans. The leader explains that this hesitation proves Bill has never taken a life before, and that no matter how fierce the battle becomes, killing someone is never simple. One of the students complains that Hans was on the verge of defeat, but Hans snaps at him to be silent. The leader then orders everyone to quiet down and observe the protagonist closely. He questions whether Bill is truly suitable as a training partner for them. Hans protests, insisting they should seize this chance to train, but the leader points out that from the very start, Bill showed no hostility toward them. Without genuine hostility, a serious fight is impossible. With that, the leader commands Squad 3 of Group A to bring out their training talismans. Bill looks on in confusion, unsure of their purpose. Addressing him as a criminal, the leader asks if Bill is aware of the Hero Academy's curriculum. He explains that one required program trains students to strike down evil without hesitation. For this purpose, they use a living criminal, allowing the students to grow accustomed to blood and screams. At this, several students recognize the name Bill Bark and recall something crucial. The name listed on their practice assignment was Phil Bark, the protagonist's uncle. Realizing his family is being discussed, Bill releases a roar of uncontrollable rage. The leader confirms his suspicion with a grave expression, yet notes that Bill's resolve is still incomplete. He can see that the protagonist remains tormented and is not yet prepared to fight. Then, Bill clenches his fist as understanding finally dawns on him. Staring at the students, he decides that defeating Oliver will require an extreme choice. He concludes that he must wipe away everything the hero built, including the students themselves. With tears streaming down his face and a deranged smile spreading across it, he embraces his new, dark purpose. Our protagonist rises to his feet and asks them to pause for a moment before launching their attack. He then asks whether they want a proper target for combat training. Bill explains that he is a blacksmith, and that fighting him in his current state would not be good practice for the group. Confused, the leader asks what he is trying to imply with all of this. The protagonist answers that he only needs a bit of time. He requests a short break to equip himself and promises that he will truly try to defeat them. The other students, however, assume he is simply looking for a chance to escape and urge the leader to finish him off immediately. The protagonist repeats the words "run away" with clear scorn and disdain. He asks whether they truly believe he would flee. Noticing his resolve, the leader agrees to the young man's request. He asks how long the preparation will take. Bill answers that 1 hour will be enough, and the leader orders him to leave and prepare. Still, he warns Bill that he already knows what will happen if he fails to return on time. One of the students jokes that they will feed his remains to the pigs, even lifting a piece of meat to emphasize his tasteless humor. As time goes by, the boy claims that the protagonist has already run away. The girl complains about losing credit for the mission, but the leader tells them to wait a bit longer. Growing restless from the delay, the girl stretches in boredom. Suddenly, a metal hand drops from the sky, racing toward one of the students. The object is caught in midair, leaving the girl completely confused about what just occurred. Moments later, a massive fiery explosion erupts in the center of the battlefield. Through the smoke, a metal hand forms and clamps onto the girl's hand in the air, She screams in terror as the metal arm, attached to a chain, pulls toward her. Immediately afterward, Bill appears on the battlefield wearing a massive, intimidating suit of armor, a single blue eye glowing brightly. He calmly declares that there are now only 35 fingers left. Enraged, one of the students shouts for the others to kill Bill in the most agonizing way possible. The remaining 2 students rush at the protagonist with all their strength. They attempt a coordinated strike, yet Bill seems completely unfazed. With a hardened expression, he prepares himself for a genuine battle. Drawing his sword, he takes a firm combat stance against the young fighters. The leader then wonders aloud how one should deal with an opponent covered in such heavy armor. He answers himself, stating that the joints are the weak points, and one of the students immediately attacks. The boy manages to strike near a joint in the protagonist's armor, since the connections are made of fabric or thin chains. They relentlessly target these vulnerable areas, attacking again and again. Even so, not even the joints allow the blade to pierce Bill's armor. The student is left stunned, having never expected such overwhelming durability. Irritated, the girl shouts that the game is over and charges forward. She screams at Bill to die as she puts all her power into the attack, hurling a metal ball toward him. Bill responds by saying that she is too soft-hearted for holding back, instead of attacking seriously. The leader calls Bill a fool for still restraining himself when he had the opportunity to deliver a finishing blow. Furious, the girl curses at the protagonist. The leader then declares that, unlike him, his students never hold back, and with a synchronized assault, they finally manage to knock Bill to the ground. One of the students slams his foot down onto Bill's back with all his strength. The girl orders the others to step on him as well, determined to pin him firmly to the ground. Soon, they begin stomping mercilessly on our protagonist's armor. Still, doubts arise among them as they question whether their attacks are doing anything at all. One student then suggests destroying the joints of Bill's armor instead. Our protagonist sneers, commenting that those who aspire to be heroes should not need 3 people to gang up on one opponent. The student dismisses this and continues attacking, restraining Bill from behind. Another student suddenly adds that it is only training and tells Bill not to take it personally. Bill lifts his head and stares at them with eyes filled with hatred and bitterness. Even as he lies on the ground, one of the students repeats that he should not take it personally. Right after Bill raises his middle finger directly in the girl's face. At that instant, Bill's armor begins to shine as an internal mechanism activates. Without warning, sharp metal spikes burst outward from every part of his armor. The students holding him are skewered and cry out in agony, completely caught off guard. Bill calmly states that targeting the joints was something he had already anticipated. He turns his head toward the leader and asks when he plans to finally step in. The leader gestures behind him, and the remaining students rush toward our protagonist with full force. Irritated, Bill readies himself to fight the academy students. However, their movements are swift, and they evade his strikes with ease. Bill swings again, but one of the students vaults cleanly over him. Annoyance flashes across Bill's face as he complains that his sword cannot reach them. He wonders how he is supposed to exact revenge if he cannot even land a hit on a mere student. He then questions how his blade will ever reach the hero Oliver someday. Taking a breath, he steadies his emotions and reminds himself not to rush. His eyes glow as he reflects that combat is like forging steel in a furnace. You cannot shape metal with a single hammer blow. You strike once, then again with everything you have, and then strike again until the steel finally bends into the form you desire. He continues fighting and defending nonstop, never allowing himself a moment of rest. Power accumulates with every clash, and his sword begins to shine with an intense glow. Our protagonist grips the weapon tightly, patiently waiting for the perfect opening. At last, he unleashes a strike that sends a massive shockwave rippling through the surroundings. One student scoffs, claiming it was nothing more than a lucky graze. Another boy then asks Hans and Lynn how they should bring the fight to an end. Bill interrupts, saying he already has a plan to finish everything decisively. Moments later, several objects shoot out from his armor toward the group. They soar through the air and scatter across the battlefield, forming a perimeter around the students. In the next instant, the objects unfold into a net that ensnares Lynn, trapping her completely. Bill declares that not even an ogre's raw strength could tear that net apart. One of the students shouts that if they fail to return soon, the academy will send reinforcements. Smiling confidently, he says that time favors them and that Bill has no chance. In response, Bill slices through the net effortlessly and asks whether they truly believed he had overlooked that possibility. He then asks if they understand why he waited until now to activate the trap. The truth is that Bill needed combat practice as well, and he thanks them for providing it. A student pleads for mercy, but Bill coldly replies that he will begin by taking fingers. Panicking, the boy screams for Bill to remove his hand at once. Desperate, he calls out to his leader for help. The leader calmly responds that the student has already passed the test. Immediately afterward, the boy is silenced by a swift, precise strike. Blood Blood splashes across Bill's armor as he watches without expression. The leader then faces our protagonist and tells him that he, too, has passed the test. Wearing a crazed grin, he congratulates Bill on his outstanding performance in the battle. It becomes clear that all the other students have also been trapped in the net. Lynn lets out a scream filled with pure terror when she sees what has happened to her classmates. Another boy shouts that leader has gone insane, unable to comprehend the situation. Before he can react further, he is struck from behind by his own leader, who does not even spare him a glance. The student is left utterly stunned, unable to accept that his master has betrayed him. Without hesitation or mercy, the leader ends the lives of his own students. Afterward, he tells them to rest at last, adding that he hopes they will be reborn into a world with better adults. Bill stays on guard, gripping his sword tightly and refusing to lower it for even a moment. Eventually, the leader tells him to stop being so tense, stating that the battle is already finished. He repeats that Bill has passed the test. Bill is shaken, as he could not see or understand what had just occurred. He questions why the master would slaughter his own students and wonders how someone like that could even be fought. Still, he braces himself, knowing the confrontation is not truly over yet. The leader claims there has been a misunderstanding and insists that the children deserved that fate. He adds that ending things quickly was kinder than letting them suffer any longer. There is a strange and terrifying certainty reflected in his eyes as he speaks. Suddenly, Bill unleashing a swift and overwhelming strike, but the leader remarks that he had already anticipated that attack pattern. Bill strikes again, but the man urges him to listen before continuing. He reveals that he came here specifically in search of the protagonist. He then asks Bill whether he harbors hatred toward the Lord Protector, the hero Oliver Prime, saying that he feels the same way, and uses a surprise move to trap Bill. He suggests that they should talk and resolve everything once and for all. The leader fixes Bill with a hard stare, clearly having lost his patience. Despite this, the protagonist seems unfocused, extending a trembling hand while gasping for breath. The man declares that there is no other choice, and a brilliant light floods the area. Approaching Bill, he says that this dreadful fate is something Bill brought upon himself. He then delivers a devastating blow, sending blood spraying through the air. The scene abruptly shifts as the protagonist jolts awake, screaming from a horrific nightmare. He finds himself lying on a wooden bed inside an unfamiliar room. Touching his face, he wonders if he is truly alive. He looks around in confusion, questioning where he is and what happened to his armor. He grabs a pen resting on the table beside the bed. Bill opens the door, holding the pen tightly. He moves forward with caution, aware that danger could be nearby. He peers through a narrow crack to observe what is happening outside. There, he sees the leader surrounded by several people, while someone asks about a key. Nearby, another man drinks endlessly and calls out for Draco to bring him more alcohol. A young man presents Sepia with a crystal, and she beams with happiness. Clearly enchanted, she cradles the crystal gently in her hands. At the sight of this, Bill freezes in shock and clenches the pen, realizing that the girl is truly Sepia. Suddenly, a voice announces that he is awake, and Bill is startled from behind. His eyes widen in terror as he understands that he has been found. Acting on instinct, he lashes out with the pen in a desperate attack. The group reacts in alarm, shouting that their boss has been assaulted. However, Orient calmly says that everything is fine and orders everyone to sit back down. Smiling, he explains that he managed to block the strike, even though the pen still pierced him. Irritated, a red-haired boy snaps at Bill, asking if he wants to get hurt and whether he even knows who the boss is. Orient quickly intervenes, soothing him and explaining that Bill must be confused and frightened by everything he has experienced. He then asks Bill if he can forgive him for bringing Sepia along without permission. At last, the leader introduces himself as Orient and moves straight to the main point. Orient then invites Bill to join his faction to overthrow the Lord Protector. Bill repeats the question, and the leader replies that his abilities would be an invaluable asset. Despite this, our protagonist rejects the offer immediately, without any hesitation, because his sole purpose in life is to personally bring an end to the Lord Protector. Orient listens calmly, a faint smile on his face, and says he understands Bill's desire for revenge. However, he adds that defeating someone who holds absolute power will not be an easy task. Because of this, Orient suggests a temporary alliance, proposing that they cooperate only until the hero Oliver is defeated. He assures Bill that after that, he will be free to act however he wishes. The entire group turns their attention to Bill, silently waiting for his response. Instead of answering, our protagonist strikes Orient's hand away with great force, his anger overflowing. He questions whether he should ever work alongside the people responsible for hurting his uncle. With hatred burning in his eyes, he orders them all to leave at once, warning that he will attack if they do not. One of the boys insists that everything was a misunderstanding, but Bill does not even acknowledge him. The leader steps forward and asks whether revenge alone will truly be enough. Bill attempts to argue, yet Orient interrupts him before he can finish speaking. He then asks asks if Bill truly believes he can face the hero by himself. Our protagonist's body trembles as he answers that he must do it with his own hands. The feeling of blood slowly dripping from his hand as the agony of loss eats away at him from the inside. Overwhelmed, he cries out in pain and collapses to the ground in utter despair. Kneeling there, Bill questions what path he should take to achieve his revenge. He mourns the loss of his arm, Sepia, and the death of his Uncle Phil. Another boy steps in and says that is enough, stating that Bill has already made his point clear. At that moment, a young man approaches and remarks that it is a pleasure to finally meet him in person. Bill looks up at him, confused by everything that is happening. His gaze lingers on the young man's hands, and he wonders what happened to his fingers. The young man introduces himself as Edric and suggests that Bill listen to the rest of the story. The scene shifts to a prison, where numerous weapons are scattered across the ground. A guard shouts at the prisoners, ordering them to pick up the weapons and prepare for combat. A man declares that anyone who can defeat the Count in battle will earn their freedom. One of the prisoners protests, saying they are ordinary people with no knowledge of fighting. He explains that they only wanted their voices to be heard, yet the Count shows no concern. Disregarding the plea, the man orders the chained hostages to be brought forward. To the prisoners' horror, their own family members are revealed as the hostages. The Count rises and states that he respects only his companions, because they are strong. He further explains that before taking up weapons, they were no different from the prisoners themselves. They had once been farmers, carpenters, and merchants, but he says the past no longer matters to him. He then declares that if the prisoners cannot fight for themselves, he will give them a reason to do so, and he proceeds to harass one of the female hostages in full view of everyone. Driven by desperation, the woman's husband rushes at the Count in an attempt to protect her. In response, the Count drags the woman in front of him, using her as a human shield to block the attack. The man freezes in shock, seeing his wife held hostage before his eyes. Without any hesitation, the Count thrusts his weapon through her back, killing her in front of her husband, blood staining his blade. He coldly asks the others why they are still standing there, doing nothing. He even mocks them, asking whether he needs to help them once more before they will fight. At last, overwhelmed by rage, the prisoners charge at the Count with everything they have. The Count watches them rush toward him, without the slightest hint of emotion. He tosses his weapon into the air, readying himself for a true battle. In the blink of an eye, a massacre unfolds, and every one of them is defeated. In the end, the man declares that weakness is a sin, and that is the reason they all met their end. Count Zahir, once the weapon master of the hero's party, now commands the regular army. His authority is absolute. He defends the Protector's territory so thoroughly that the Protector himself never needs to step forward. As long as Zahir remains in power, the revolutionary army faces a wall of steel. Bill questions whether they can really defeat Zahir's forces. Hearing this, the red-haired boy laughs at Bill, calling him an idiot. He says that a head-on collision would mean sudden death for them. The boy then asks Bill if he even knows where they are. Bill observes the surroundings and notices that they are in a basement, but the red-haired boy cuts him off mid-sentence and corrects him, saying that they are in an underground tunnel. Then comes the bigger twist. It's an underground city, a sprawling hidden metropolis, connected to every corner of the kingdom. This is the revolution's secret weapon, a maze beneath the earth, a city that can strike anywhere, anytime. The leader declares that they will use the city's tunnels to hunt down Zahir. The scene shifts to the training ground. Bill focuses with his soul and mind, and with his full force, he attacks the dummy. Unfortunately, the wooden sword bounces back and flies out of his hand. Without hesitation, the commander says that Bill has no talent at all. The commander then asks Bill to join the revolutionary team, stating that if he does, he will teach him sword techniques. He further explains that Bill's greed will cost him his life. Bill stands there silently and picks up his sword without giving any explanation to the commander. Suddenly, Bill asks the commander about how to gather mana. The commander pretends not to know about mana and tells Bill that he should ask a mage instead, not him. But Bill fires back, saying that he saw the commander using mana while killing his student. The commander stands stunned, eyes widened in disbelief, and asks if Bill can really see mana. Suddenly, the commander starts laughing like a madman, praising Bill. He points out that Bill lacks swordsmanship, but that it doesn't matter because he can see mana. Filled with joy, he turns back and explains that it will be worth teaching Bill swordsmanship. Carrying the giant monster, he says that he is quite busy right now, and that he will be heading to the Hero Academy. He adds that he is a spy, after all. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Count Zahir's fief, where the Empire's military machine grinds into motion. A troop commander issues crisp orders. All personnel, split into 3 squads and search. Use signal magic immediately upon discovering any suspicious person. The soldiers respond in unison. Understood. Their discipline is a stark contrast to the revolutionaries. The Empire is organized, efficient, and relentless, but the revolutionaries know how to strike where it hurts. The counter-strategy is revealed. A revolutionary declares that they will assassinate the enemy's morale through guerrilla warfare, and so it begins. Squads are ambushed in the tunnels and wiped out completely. Signal magic fails, and panic spreads. The underground captains, Draco and Mog of the Earth, lead the assaults. Their strikes are sudden and merciless. Confusion reigns among the Imperial troops. Soldiers cry out, wondering where the enemies vanished to, only for them to reappear with lethal precision. The tunnels become a nightmare battlefield, swallowing squads whole. Amid the chaos, the rookie's traps prove devastating. One squad is annihilated, and veterans begin to acknowledge his worth. One veteran remarks that the trap the rookie set is amazing. Another admits that they were told to keep a close eye on this rookie, and now they can see why. The revolutionaries taunt the soldiers, telling them to drop their weapons and take off their gear. Suddenly, the gray-haired boy sees a tower-built man who looks like he doesn't care about anything. The blonde moves forward, saying that he wants to end this bloodshed peacefully. Suddenly, another teammate shouts for him to stay back. When they turn around, the huge man is already aiming at his head. With a simple strike, the knight cuts the boy down like a tree branch. The teammate and Bill are stunned, not knowing what just happened. The blonde shouts to prepare for battle, warning them that they are dealing with a monster and that simple tricks will not work on him. The knight stares at them, as if he is a monster staring at its prey. Bill quickly takes his stance and notices that the knight's mana is on par with Barhan's, the commander, or even higher. The revolutionary army is on the brink of collapse. A towering, shadowy figure stands over a fallen soldier, while the rest can only stare in stunned disbelief at his overwhelming presence. From a distance, the female commander watches the carnage unfold, worry carved deep into her expression. One glance is enough to tell her the truth. That massive frame, that cruelly oversized weapon. Her fears are confirmed. It is Kisem, the notorious right-hand man of the tyrant Zahir, a living symbol of brute power. The commander understands instantly that facing him head-on would be nothing short of suicide. With their current strength, her entire force would be slaughtered. Below her, soldiers are already being cut down one after another, yet despair does not consume her. Instead, her eyes sharpen with resolve. She snaps out an order without hesitation. Split left and right, flank formation. The troops move instantly, placing absolute trust in her command. Boots thunder across the battlefield as the soldiers divide into two groups, dust billowing as they charge. The fight intensifies as they swarm Qasim from both sides, trying to bury him beneath sheer numbers. The plan becomes obvious. By attacking from the blind spot, they force Qasim to constantly shift his attention, limiting his vision and reactions. And in that fleeting moment of distraction, she strikes. The commander launches herself into the air, using a fallen soldier's body as a foothold. She hurtles toward Qasim, blade ready. But the butcher responds instantly, swinging his weapon with terrifying force. The impact sends her flying and shatters her dagger on contact. Still, her strike connects just enough, not to wound him, but to create the opening she needs. With fire in her eyes, she shouts. She sends the signal. The commander has deliberately created distance between herself and the towering Qasim. Bill, who had been lying in wait, raises his arm. A device mounted on it begins to glow, blazing with intense heat. The scene cuts to an earlier moment inside a workshop. Bill stands beside a master craftsman, voicing a long-held question. While discussing explosive ammunition, he asks why mana isn't infused directly into the rounds. The seasoned engineer beside him listens carefully. Bhaskar, captain of the artillery engineers, explains the issue. Explosive powder is far too fine and unstable. Unlike other weapons, it cannot safely withstand direct mana infusion. While theoretically possible, he explains, doing so would require perfect control over countless variables, humidity, temperature, air pressure, far beyond what their current technology can handle. Bhaskar concludes firmly, with their equipment, it cannot be done, no matter who attempts it. If someone truly could manage such a feat, they would have to be a god. Back in the present, Bill smirks. He proves the impossible wrong with two simple words. Fire boom. A fire-attributed grenade launches from his arm-mounted cannon, streaking straight toward Qasim. Upon impact, a massive explosion erupts, engulfing Qasim in roaring flames. The shockwave rips through the battlefield, throwing debris in every direction. The commander and her aide, Edwin, stare in disbelief at the sheer destructive power, but their relief is short-lived. As the smoke clears, Qasim steps forward, unharmed. Edwin barely manages to shout a warning before Qasim surges forward. In a blur of motion, Qasim delivers a devastating kick that sends Edwin flying. Bill reacts instantly. He activates Ice Boom. A second grenade fires, releasing freezing energy that crashes into Qasim. Ice spreads instantly, locking him in place mid-charge. His furious expression is frozen within a solid crystalline shell, but it does not last. With an irritated roar, Qasim flexes his monstrous strength and shatters the ice from within. The moment he breaks free, he charges straight at Bill. Bill analyzes the situation calmly. His weapons were rushed. Against an opponent like Qasim, their raw power is still insufficient. Even so, Bill does not retreat. As he prepares another round, the commander shouts urgently, Edwin, to protect Bill. Despite his injuries, Edwin obeys without hesitation. He and the commander rush forward, placing themselves directly between Qasim and Bill. They know the truth. Bill is their only real source of firepower. tower. The commander closes in, but Kasim does not even acknowledge her. His gaze remains locked on Bill alone. Her expression hardens. She is too late. Switching tactics instantly, she slams her palm into the ground. The earth beneath Kasim collapses without warning. The ground gives way, and his charge is abruptly halted as he plunges into a pit trap. Before anyone can react, another figure drops into the battlefield, landing confidently as laughter bursts from his mouth. Bill turns toward the newcomer, momentarily stunned. This is Draco. A small creature named Mog perches on his shoulder as he strides forward arrogantly. So this is the famous newcomer. It seems he is nothing impressive, he scoffs. The others feel immediate relief at his arrival, recognizing him as Orion's genius. The commander, however, remains cautious. Don't lower your guard, Draco. That's Kasim. Zahir's right, handman, captain of the knights. Draco freezes in shock but instantly transforms into wild excitement. He laughs, saying he has caught someone big. Mog cackles alongside him as Draco revels in imagined glory, but the next instant shatters his confidence. Kasim leaps out of the pit with terrifying ease. Draco's eyes go wide, shocked, thinking what kind of body is that? Kasim crashes down like a meteor. The impact unleashes a violent shockwave that throws everyone back. You're irritating me, Kasim growls, his voice dripping with malice. Dark energy swirls around him as his killing intent locks onto Draco. I won't kill you quickly, Kasim says. I'll break your legs first. Then I'll grind every bone in your body to dust. As he moves to attack, Bill prepares a third grenade, glowing with golden lightning. Before he can fire, Draco yanks him aside, narrowly avoiding Kasim's strike. Draco snaps at Bill, saying the protagonist is insane for trying to fire from that close. Draco stares at him. Bill continues. They work. Fire boom and ice boom weren't failures. They just didn't do what you expected. Draco sweats, confused and frustrated. Enough nonsense. Leave this to me, saying he charges forward recklessly. Mog leaps from his shoulder, landing beside Bill and drawing a glowing circle beneath his feet. Bill looks up, startled. Everyone get away from me, Draco shouts. I'll handle him. Kasim sneers. Even together you'd fail, and you challenge me alone. You're too young to understand your limits. One is enough, Draco replies, spinning his shovel. Then he slams it into the ground and shouts hell pit. The earth explodes open. A massive chasm swallows Kasim whole, while Draco stands safely atop a pillar. Kasim plummets into darkness, roaring in rage. He says he will just climb back up. The walls churn and seal, trapping him deep below. Draco pants, grinning. It worked. Seeing everyone retreat, he turns to leave, then stops. Bill is still standing there. Draco yells at Bill, saying he built an escape tunnel for them, and that the magic dirt won't last long. I hear you, Bill replies quietly. Suddenly, there is no sign of Kasim inside the hole. Draco becomes confused. A furious roar erupts from below. Kasim climbs out, wrapped in a sinister blue aura, stronger than before. Draco tells Bill to quickly run, but Bill stays calm. His eyes blaze blue as mono-seeing activates. Kasim becomes a storm of chaotic energy in his vision. Bill tracks every movement. As Kasim lunges, Bill activates Thunder Boom. Lightning tears through Kasim's chest, blasting him off the cliff into the abyss. Kasim stares at the hole in his chest, utterly unable to comprehend what just happened. Kasim reels backward from the impact. Just as it appears he will lose his footing, he forcefully pushes off the cliff wall. In the next heartbeat, he launches himself into the air, soaring upward with explosive strength as his weapon swings toward Bill. Bill barely has time to react, his eyes widening in shock at the brute's unexpected agility. Kasim bellows that he will grind them into dust and surges forward, delivering a devastating blow aimed straight at Bill. The weapon cuts through empty space. A violent shockwave ripples outward, rattling the air itself. Kasim stiffens, stunned by the failure of his strike. When he looks down, he sees a gaping pit where Bill had been standing moments earlier. His body begins to shake as blind fury overtakes him. At the same time, Bill's red-haired companion, who had just pulled him out of harm's way, rushes over in agitation. Draco shouts wildly, calling Bill insane and asking whether he really needs to keep showing off. Bill pays him no attention, but Draco keeps yelling, telling him to stop messing around and retreat so they can regroup, insisting that at their current strength, they have no chance of winning. Inside Bill's mind, a strategy is already taking shape. He concludes that their mana stone reserves must be increased. His thoughts race as he considers using troll blood as a catalyst, combined with a compact mana binder, to compress the mana and drastically raise its release density. Back on the battlefield, Kasim throws his head back and roars in rage, swinging his weapon in every direction as he howls for them to come out. Meanwhile, Bill and Draco retreat into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness. Bill knows this fight was not enough, but he silently swears that the next encounter will be different. His eyes harden with resolve as he finishes the thought. The next time they meet, he will definitely barbecue him. Later, At their base, the Resistance captain recognizes their efforts, stating that both Bill and Draco performed well. Everyone gathers around a large map as the captain reviews the battle. He acknowledges that Kesim's sudden arrival caused heavy losses, but they narrowly avoided complete destruction. With a nod, he offers his thanks to both of them. Draco casually throws an arm around Bill's shoulders, but Bill merely scoffs, clearly unimpressed by the praise. Getting straight to the point, Bill turns to the captain and asks what the next move is. The captain chuckles, telling him not to rush, as he was just about to explain. He motions toward the map and introduces the first phase of the operation, the Shadow Reconnaissance Unit. The captain explains that large numbers are unnecessary. Their real objective is psychological warfare, keeping the enemy in constant fear by making attacks unpredictable in both time and location. He places a marker on the map to outline the first step. They will strike once in the eastern forest. As he speaks, a scene flashes of their forces ambushing enemy troops in the dark woods, plunging the area into chaos. Next, he sets down a second marker. Then they hit from the north, he announces, describing the following stage of the coordinated assault. The narration is accompanied by a brutal visual. A soldier lets out a scream as he is cut down, collapsing to the ground, a grim example of the havoc caused by the planned guerrilla strikes. The captain then reveals the most critical element of the psychological tactic. One enemy soldier will be deliberately allowed to escape. Below, a terrified figure is shown sprinting through the forest, desperate to survive. With a cold expression, the captain explains that this lone survivor becomes the spark that spreads fear throughout the enemy forces. The strategy unfolds exactly as intended. Within the fortress, soldiers whisper nervously in the middle of the night, passing along the news. The 7th platoon was hit as well. The rumors spread uncontrollably, racing through the ranks like wildfire. A hushed soldier mutters that only a man named Damien barely managed to return alive, concluding that patrol duty has become a living nightmare, all because of those damn mole bastards. The captain's voiceover explains their thinking. To the soldiers, the wall represents absolute safety. The underground assault unit begins moving. Draco appears with a self-assured grin, arms folded, clearly eager for what comes next. Above ground, panic erupts as soldiers feel violent tremors beneath their feet. They shout warnings, claiming it must be an earthquake. They have no idea that an underground tunnel has already breached the interior of the fortress. The ground explodes as Draco's unit bursts upward, catching the enemy utterly unprepared. From below, Draco taunts the terrified soldiers, his face stretched into a cruel, sadistic smile as he asks how they are supposed to sleep now that the chaos has begun. The captain's calm, tactical narration returns, stating that they will strike from the east once again. The visuals show another flawless ambush. A lone soldier cries out before being cut down in the darkness. The plan continues without mercy. Another piece is placed on the map, and next they strike from the south. Below, yet another corpse lies motionless on the ground. The unseen assaults never stop, slowly wearing down the defenders. The fortress itself seems to shake as psychological pressure crushes morale. A solitary guard on watch lets out a broken groan. His pale face and terrified eyes reveal the effectiveness of Bill's psychological warfare. At the main gate, 2 guards remain on duty, projecting an illusion of calm before disaster strikes. Nearby, another guard struggles to stay awake, his posture slack, drool slipping from his mouth as he nods off. Suddenly, a fist appears out of nowhere and smashes into his face. The attacker is revealed to be Kesim. Enraged, the lieutenant immediately orders the soldiers to form a patrol unit. Having reached his breaking point, Commander Kesim stands with blood still smeared on his knuckles, his expression twisted with murderous fury. He snarls that they are going mole hunting. Back at the rebel base, the captain coolly states that this outcome was expected. As Kesim loses patience and begins personally leading the search, Draco, unable to restrain himself, excitedly shouts that they should catch Kesim. The captain shuts him down instantly with a firm refusal. He reveals the next stage of the plan. We let him go. The scene shifts to Kesim exactly as predicted, marching his troops out of the fortress to hunt the rebels himself. Draco, confused, demands an explanation. He asks why, reminding the captain that capturing Kesim was supposed to lure out Zahair. The captain responds with a calm smile, confidence written across his face. He says not yet and explains that there are still loose ends to cut. He explains the next phase in detail. Once Kesim moves, operations outside the wall cease entirely. The visuals show Kesim growing increasingly frustrated, ordering his men to dig deeper and search harder, unaware he is playing directly into their hands. His search yields nothing, and he finally releases a furious roar. The captain continues, explaining that while Kesim wastes time outside the walls, Bill and his unit move freely through the now exposed streets inside the fortress. Their route is unobstructed. Kesim's officers are eliminated one by one. The operation reaches its most lethal stage as Bill's team systematically dismantles the enemy's command chain. The captain summarizes the strategy, knocking over a chess piece. First, they planted rumors of an unknown, unstoppable terror. He knocks over a second piece, Second, they inflicted sleep deprivation through non-stop, unpredictable attacks, leaving the soldiers mentally exhausted and permanently on edge. Third, he continues, as an image of a fallen officer appears, even the officers themselves are beginning to die. This final strike completely breaks the chain of command. Using a chessboard as a metaphor, the captain explains that Qasim once ruled his soldiers through fear, keeping them tightly controlled and surrounded. However, this new and far more terrifying fear of an unseen enemy causes his control to unravel, and his pawns start disappearing into the darkness one by one. The price of this failure is devastating. Qasim is made to kneel in shame before his superior. A cold, commanding voice calls out his name. Qasim. Shaking, he responds. His superior is revealed to be the formidable Count Zahir, a man draped in gold and purple, gazing down at him from his throne-like seat. Zahir speaks, his tone heavy with disappointment. Recently, I have been hearing that things over there have become unstable. The rumors surrounding you are not favorable. He continues his reprimand, asking if even his soldiers no longer obey him. Qasim winces as Zahir cuts him down further, stating bluntly that he is being underestimated. Panic sets in as Qasim rushes to defend his dignity. Who would dare look down on Qasim, the one you personally appointed? Count Zahir remains unimpressed. He hums thoughtfully while glancing at a document, then casually cracks his knuckles. Without any warning, he crushes the document in his hand and releases a violent surge of red energy straight at his subordinate. The blast slams into Qasim's chest, hurling him backward as he crashes onto the polished floor with a heavy impact. Zahir steps toward him, eyes icy and cruel, and asks with feigned curiosity if he is mistaken, gripping his chest in agony. A terrified Qasim can only choke out that this is not what he meant and that he is sorry. Zahir leans back, his voice dripping with disdain. He explains that there was a reason he placed someone as foolish as Qasim in that position and asks if he understands. He then delivers his final chilling order to the trembling commander, telling him to prove that he is useful. Back among the rebels, the captain gestures toward the map, concluding his precise strategic explanation. With the strategy finalized, the captain asks the group one last question. Who will face Qasim directly? He looks to those who have personally witnessed Qasim's strength. Draco, having fought him himself, strongly agrees with the assessment of Qasim's power. 1000%, he says, eyes wide. He is an absolute monster. As others begin proposing their strongest fighters, Bill steps forward, cutting them off with a calm declaration that he will do it. His gaze is steady as he addresses the group, stating that he can handle Qasim. Draco reacts in complete disbelief, throwing his hands up and demanding how and with what. He reminds Bill of their earlier defeat, flashing back to their first encounter, pointing out that Qasim did not even react to Bill's attacks. The captain watches Bill closely, his sharp eyes sensing that there is more behind his confidence. Bill answers calmly, explaining his reasoning. The only reason I failed last time was because those magic bullets were made on the spot, he says, his eyes growing colder. This time it is different. He reveals his trump card in a single sentence. The upgrades are complete. The image shows his newly built weapon, a dense, powerful-looking metal cylinder. Draco remains unconvinced and snaps, losing his patience. And if that still does not work, then what? He shouts. The captain's face turns serious as he agrees with Draco's point, recognizing the risk. If we miss this opportunity, who knows how long it will be before we get another one. To silence any remaining doubt, Bill makes a solemn gesture, placing his hand firmly on the strategy table. With everyone staring at him, he offers the ultimate price for failure, his right arm. He locks eyes with them and makes an unbreakable vow. If I fail, I will give you my right arm. The weight of his promise leaves the entire room in stunned silence. Draco, taken aback by the extreme vow, scoffs and turns away, saying he do not need his hand. The tension suddenly breaks as the captain bursts into loud, roaring laughter, confusing Draco. Watching the captain laugh, Bill smirks slightly, accepting the challenge. Fine, so that is how you want to play it. After composing himself, the captain's expression becomes serious again. With his trust fully placed in Bill, he leans forward and asks, so, what is the plan? The scene shifts. Following the rebels' plan, Qasim walks alone down a deserted forest path, searching for his elusive enemies. He suddenly stops, sensing a presence. Standing in the clearing before him are the two figures he has been hunting. Qasim's face twists with rage as he recognizes them. He growls, we finally meet again. He glares at Bill and Draco, his voice full of venom as he spits out, you mole bastards! Bill is ready. He pulls out his ultimate creation, a repulsor straight from Iron Man, and points it toward Qasim. Qasim revealed his weapon and questioned them about why he carried such a rough and primitive club. He explained that the club was ideal for hunting moles. As he finished speaking, he charged forward. Both Bill and Draco immediately prepared themselves for battle. Draco activated Sink Fang, attempting to restrain Qasim's leg, but Qasim pulled free without effort. Draco urged Bill to act quickly and finish the monster. Bill did not hesitate and released a light boom at maximum output, straight toward Qasim. Qasim remained standing as if the attack meant nothing at first, but he soon realized that the power far exceeded the earlier strikes. His eyes widened when he saw a massive rock shattered into fragments. Even Draco was left speechless by the sheer destructive force. Kazim brushed off Draco's skill casually and remarked that Bill was no longer just an ordinary field mole. This irritated Draco, who felt that Kazim was underestimating him. He rushed forward, determined to prove himself. Draco was confident that he could withstand Kazim's next move. Suddenly, Bill shouted a warning, telling Draco to dodge instead of blocking. At that very moment, Kazim had already leapt above Draco. With a single devastating swing, he smashed the ground apart. Draco barely managed to escape and froze in shock after witnessing such destruction from one strike. From the ground, Draco told Bill that Kazim's power was overwhelming and that retreating was their only option for now. As they fell back, Draco asked how Bill knew Kazim had focused mana into his club. What Draco did not realize was that Bill could actually see mana itself. Bill avoided explaining and told Draco to stay alert, as Kazim was already closing in behind them. Just before Kazim attacked again, Draco slipped underground using his skill, narrowly evading the blow. Kazim grew increasingly irritated as they continued to hide and evade. Suddenly, both Draco and Bill emerged behind him, and Bill unleashed Fire Boom. A huge fireball surged forward and struck Kazim from behind. Kazim dashed ahead, commenting that Bill's flames were extremely hot. Bill calmly observed the result, concluding that normal output attacks were not very effective against Kazim. Draco attempted to block him with ground pop, but Kazim crushed the rock with raw force. Draco once again retreated underground. This time, Kazim's frustration exploded. He channeled mana into his leg and slammed it into the earth with tremendous strength, tearing the ground apart. Beneath the surface, Bill and Draco protected themselves from falling debris. Kazim continued his assault, striking repeatedly and turning the battlefield into ruins. Draco was completely overwhelmed, but Bill suddenly leapt out from the shattered ground. The instant he emerged, he saw Kazim preparing to strike him down. Before the blow could land, Draco shoved Bill aside and declared that he would face Kazim himself. As Bill fell away, he recalled the commander's teachings about mana, how rare it was to perceive it, and how those who could wield it became terrifyingly powerful. Kazim brought his club down on Draco with full strength. Draco gathered mana into his shovel, believing he could endure the impact. For a brief moment, it seemed he had succeeded. Then sharp pain tore through him. Looking down, he realized Kazim had struck him with a devastating kick instead. Kazim sent Draco crashing into a wall. When the dust settled, Draco lay unconscious. Bill felt a wave of concern, fearing the damage might be fatal. He clearly recognized that Kazim had not infused mana into his club at all, but into his leg. Kazim advanced toward Bill, stating that Bill now stood alone. Bill glanced at his weapon and knew it needed time to recharge before he could release full power. He drew his sword and took a ready stance. Kazim mocked him, claiming Bill's weapon should already be drained of energy. With a thunderous step, Kazim swung his heavy club toward Bill. Bill remained calm and activated Fire Boom, forcing Kazim backward. Kazim was genuinely surprised that Bill could push him away. Without pause, Bill followed up with Ice Boom, freezing Kazim's leg in place. Not allowing him any chance to recover, Bill charged forward. Kazim retaliated with a powerful swing, declaring that Bill could never defeat him. At the moment their weapons met, Bill's sword sliced through the club and severed Kazim's hand in a single clean motion. Kazim froze in disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. As Draco slowly regained consciousness, he remembered Commander Barhan's words and realized they were true. Bill could not only gather mana, but also create weapons of a higher level. Bill stood steady and composed, thinking that even a mana-infused weapon could still be cut down. Activating his Seeing Eye skill, he focused on Kazim's weak point, determined to bring this long and exhausting battle to an end right here. Kazim was consumed by rage, unable to believe that his body had been injured by a brat like Bill. He crushed the ice Bill had created beneath his feet, and muttered that from this moment onward, he would fight seriously. With that, he lunged forward. Bill activated his skill, and noticed mana gathering on Kazim's weapon. Moving swiftly, Bill evaded the strike and countered with Fire Boom. Kazim blocked it effortlessly and shoved Bill backward. Refusing to back down, Bill charged again with determination. Using his sword as a buffer, he released another blast, sending both of them flying apart. Kazim had already anticipated this and attempted to counterattack, but Bill smoothly fired toward Kazim's head. The attack left no scratch at all. Enraged, Kazim rushed forward, striking with his left hand. Bill immediately realized it was a feint, sensing mana forming on Kazim's right side, and positioned his sword accordingly. Kazim unleashed a full-powered strike, crashing into Bill's sword and slicing it cleanly in half. Despite his hand being cut, Kazim followed through, smashing Bill away and sending him flying. Crying out in pain, Kazim questioned how Bill had managed to cut him without even using mana. Bill forced himself back onto his feet, realizing his strategy was working. He decided to keep up the pressure and began firing continuously. Qasim dodged the incoming attacks, and Bill assumed Qasim could not maintain high output while moving rapidly. While Bill analyzed him, Qasim silently focused mana into his legs and launched himself forward with tremendous force. Bill easily sidestepped, having already noticed the mana buildup in Qasim's legs. Qasim attempted a kick, but the protagonist blasted him with Fire Boom, throwing him off balance. Spotting the opening, Bill slashed swiftly at Qasim's leg. Qasim mocked him, claiming Bill's swordsmanship was too weak to pierce his armor. Bill sensed that Qasim was beginning to understand his counter-strategy. The protagonist attacked again, combining Fire Boom with a sword strike, but Qasim avoided both. Laughing, Qasim declared that Bill's magic bullet powers were weakening, and that the only thing he needed to fear was Bill's sword. Using his limited intelligence, Qasim coated his entire body in mana. Seeing this, the protagonist realized the battle had become far more difficult and suspected Qasim had already figured out the counter. The giant charged forward, wielding his massive weapon despite his half-severed hand. This time, Bill could not read the attack at all, as Qasim's entire body was shrouded in mana. Letting out a roar, Qasim struck with overwhelming force, flinging Bill away. Bill's sword was also sent flying, and he crashed heavily onto the ground. Believing victory was his, Qasim laughed and taunted Bill, declaring the fight is over. Bill panted heavily and noticed his weapon was close to breaking. Wearing a grim smile, Qasim proclaimed himself the strongest man alive and vowed to punish all traitors. He mocked Bill's awkward fighting style, saying the weapon was ill-suited for his body, and accused him of being the blacksmith who had attempted to assassinate the Lord Protector. Bill remained silent, thinking desperately for another option. Qasim then began recounting the past, saying Count Zahir once spoke of a supreme blacksmith in the Valderon Empire. This craftsman had forged weapons for the hero and his companions, yet Bill Smith had been arrogant, refusing to create arms or armor for nobles or adventurers. According to Qasim, Bill eventually lost his sanity, stole from royal vaults, and attacked the Lord Protector. He praised the Lord Protector's generosity for allowing such a criminal to live freely. Declaring Bill an ungrateful wretch, Qasim announced that as the guardian of justice, Giant Qasim would deliver judgment in the Lord Protector's name. The verdict was death. Suddenly, Qasim realized Bill's weapon was gone. When he looked again, Draco's pet had already returned the sword to the protagonist. Bill insulted Zahir, stating that his habit of lying had not changed, which sent Qasim into a frenzy. Qasim muttered that Count Zahir was a divine being who had granted him freedom. With that, Qasim charged once more. Bill took his stance, gripping his weapon firmly. While Qasim had been ranting, Bill had secretly charged his weapon to its maximum output. With a thunderous Fire Boom, Bill launched his attack, blasting everything around them. Both of them were blasted away, leaving behind a huge crater in the ground. At one corner of the battlefield, Qasim lay unconscious. From within the thick smoke, Bill emerged like a seasoned warrior. One of his weapon hands was completely destroyed, and his body was badly wounded and bleeding. Bill quietly muttered that the gamble had been worth it. Even if his gun was gone, he could always rebuild it. Staring at Qasim's unmoving body, Bill raised his finely crafted sword and questioned who the ungrateful one really was, and what Qasim even knew about him. The story then shifts into Qasim's past. Qasim was actually a gentle and kind person, but because of his large and intimidating body, he was constantly bullied. People kicked him around and stole his food. Even so, he worked tirelessly for his beloved bunnies. He cared for them, fed them, and even slept beside them. One day, after returning from work, he witnessed a horrifying sight. The same ungrateful bullies had roasted his bunnies and were eating them casually, as if it meant nothing. At that moment, something inside Qasim broke, and he unalived them. Later, the judge sentenced him to death. Having already lost everyone he loved, Qasim calmly accepted his fate. That was when Zahir appeared, accepted Qasim as family, and told him that he was no longer alone. Returning to the present, Bill's body shook as he prepared to end Qasim's life. Suddenly, Qasim tightly grabbed his weapon and let out a powerful roar filled with energy, shouting family. Bill was stunned that Qasim could still release such strength. Bill rushed forward to strike. Just as both were about to clash, a spear flew in from nowhere and struck toward Qasim, unleashing a massive shockwave. Somehow, Qasim managed to evade it. When he looked up, he saw a blonde girl standing above them. Even Bill did not recognize who she was. The blonde beauty remarked that it was impressive for a solo rookie to push Qasim to such an extent. When Qasim noticed that she had thrown away her weapon, he mocked her, calling it a reckless decision. The blonde girl calmly took her stance, mana surrounding her body, and within a single moment, she completely overwhelmed Qasim. The brutal 5-chapter battle against Qasim came to an end in in an instant. Casually, she called out to Bill and said she was there to pick him up. Bill was so drained that he could not even open his eyes and soon fell unconscious. Sometime later, Sepia was seen holding Bill. Suddenly, Draco contacted him and said that Bill was finally awake. Poor Sepia, now without legs, was pitiful to see. Draco informed Bill that he had been unconscious for 4 days. He said Bill looked fine and told him to get dressed and come outside. In another room, Deputy Commander Sylvia Orion greeted Bill and joked that they had almost prepared a coffin for him. She brought up the girl who had saved his life and told Bill that he should understand by now that he could not reach his goals on his own. Sylvia then asked Bill to choose a unit. Bill admitted that he did not know anything about the units. Sylvia began explaining. First was the Varhan Lightning Assault Unit, frontline warriors who charge first, attract enemy focus, and tear open defensive lines. Second was Lena's Shadow Intelligence Unit, experts in information gathering, espionage, and assassination, silently shifting the course of war. Third was Zadro's Field Medical Corps, composed of healers and clerics who rescue the injured and return them to battle. Fourth was Basker's Artillery Engineers, specialists in explosives and traps who both create routes and obliterate them. Lastly was Draco's Underground Assault Unit, fighters who burrow beneath the earth, generate tremors, and bring down enemy fortifications. After finishing her explanation, Sylvia asked Bill which unit he preferred. With a confident expression, Bill